All right, this is the Village of Peotone Board meeting for February 23rd of 2015. We begin by rising to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Riker.
Here.
Mr. Hupkey.
Here.
Mr. Wicker.
Here.
Mr. Hack.
Here.
Mr. Callahan.
Here.
Mr. Forsythe.
Here. Okay, let the record show that all trustees are present and we have a quorum to officially conduct business. First order of business being the correction or approval as presented of the February 9th, 2015 regular village board minutes. Trustees, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Motion. Second.
Motion by trustee Hack, seconded by trustee Forsythe to approve the February 9th, 2015 regular village board meeting minutes. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Hack.
Yes.
Mr. Forsythe.
Yes.
Mr. Callahan.
Yes.
Mr. Wicker.
Yes.
Mr. Hupkey.
Present.
Mr. Riker.
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries, minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is the accounts payable and payroll. Trustees, you have in your packet the payroll for the pay period ending February 14th of 2015 in the amount of $48,587.29. In the general fund, you have bills totaling $250,464.18. Water and sewer fund, bills totaling $31,971.22. I call your attention to item H on the agenda down below, which is for the approval of the pay request for Iroquois paving in the amount of $212,358.65. I would like to tell you that that check is included in the $250,464.18 total. Having said that, I will ask for a motion to pay the bills with the proviso pending approval of the Iroquois paving check in the amount of $212,358.65 later in the agenda. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved. Second.
Motion by trustee Wicker, second by trustee Riker to approve the payment of the bills with the check to Iroquois paving pending approval later in the agenda. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Wicker.
Yes.
Mr. Riker.
Yes.
Mr. Hupkey.
Yes.
Mr. Forsythe.
Yes.
Mr. Callahan.
Yes.
Mr. Hack.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries and bills approved with the note pending the approval on the Iroquois check later. We come to public comment and or questions for any non-agenda item. In other words, if you're not on the agenda and you would like to tell us or ask us something, now is the time to do it. Okay, moving down to reports of committees, officials, and staff. The clerk collector report and the treasurer's report of the receipts and balances of the village to date are in the report. And if the trustees do not have any questions, we'll move on to the police chief 2014 annual uniform report. Chief?
Good evening to everyone. Mr. Gray had come up to me actually last week and indicated that I was going to do an annual report to the department, to the village, and I actually was. So it wasn't like he was putting the gun to my head. I was already working on it. So with that, I'll just kind of explain some of the information I gave to the village and the press. And last year, you know, some numbers are here, and I won't go crazy on reading the numbers because everybody has them. You know, there's so many traffic citations issued, about over 600, and then we get into the big one that kind of has some noticeable numbers, our ordinance violations, which we call parking, vehicles, stickers, and some code enforcement. Last year we had issued about a little less than 1,000 ordinance violations, and of course 620 of them were for our enforcement program on people buying our village sticker. Of the 628 citations we had mailed to people that the that were listed to the Secretary of State Registered Vehicle list that we received. About 410 of them were voided because parties had moved and didn't update their vehicle registration, and some of the vehicles had died or been sold. Of that, there was about 223 that were paid for, and people had to buy their updated stickers, and 64 of them went to court, and what court action was done by them. Some of the judges asked that they come back and show that they bought the sticker, and so it was a very eventful time when we do this enforcement program, because it not only involves the time of the police and our side of the table, but also the table of the village. Because every one we write, there's about 3 phone calls to the village people, Donna and her staff, about these violations and then what they can do, and and it's unfortunate, but we just ask that we have a 2-year ticket program, and we ask that people comply with the regulations as they exist. And some people, they get it in the mail, and we hear about the mail issues. Oh, I didn't know about it. I said, well, I don't know what planet you're from, because the village sticker has been around forever in Peotone. So, anyway.
And by the way, you do put up signs around the village indicating that the deadline is coming up.
I don't know noticeably what more we could put up other than go door to door with people. And but moving along, we have how many DUIs, how many people don't have licenses that are arrested, traffic accidents. We had 55 of them. There is some relevance to the corning in Route 50 by the Speedway as being the higher area for our traffic accidents. The other roads along Route 50 can be Peotone Wilmington Road, which has stop signs everywhere saying don't go, and they run into each other. So I don't know how, the public, you can never defy or tell people how to drive, because, but administrative towing were people that they have to bond their car out if they create some sort of traffic offenses. We had 55 of them. Our computer-aided dispatch, which tells the activity of police, those numbers are about 9,000. Luckily, we only pay our dispatch service for as many that the system they generate at the dispatch center. Half of our calls are logged in by the officers, whether they're doing some community service, checking businesses, a lot of computer stuff they can log in, and we don't get charged for it.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize that, Chief, because we're one of the police departments of all of those in EastCom that has been on the forefront of getting, having our officers do a lot of work rather than the dispatchers, which saves us a bundle every year in the cost of dispatching. So kudos to the guys for doing the written reports that they have to do on the computer.
As the mayor mentioned, just a quick review, at one point we were paying $150,000 a year for dispatch fees. Presently, I think in this year's budget, that's been down to about $100,000. I mean, there's a whole history of dispatch fees in that, so one of the few services that has actually gone down, but the formula for it's based on population and how many CAD or computer-aided dispatch calls are fingered by the dispatch room or the officers. So we run about 50%. I mean, we don't let the officers fingering or computerizing their traffic stops, or when they're dealing with the people in the middle of bar fights, we don't ask that they log in or press some buttons. But majority of our calls are generated, I mean, half of them are generated by the dispatch world. And so as Mr. Gray and the mayor did indicate, they go to those meetings with our EastCom co-op, and those fees are not cheap. And departments that don't use the computer and have their guys using them, they're paying dearly, because it costs big bundles when they start assessing that fee.
Not only that, but it enables us to operate with the current staff that we have at EastCom, as opposed to if the police officers push the work off on the dispatchers, as several communities had in the past, it causes us to have additional people working in the dispatch office, which raises all the costs for everybody in dispatching. And we have used this indicator as a method to give credits to the communities where the police officers take on the initiative to take care of work previously kind of pushed off on the dispatchers.
So when you see me order computers, just nod, say, I guess I'm saving you money, gentlemen, and
You are.
Other crowd, so, moving along, like I said, we've, some of the types of arrests we have, of course, people have drugs, and they have cannabis, and they have drug paraphernalia, and they want to have family fights, so, that's what we kind of get involved in. And last but not least, a noticeable amount is, in 2014, I know the weather was the channel, but we wrote almost 200 snow tickets. Now, I don't know what else to tell the public about 2 inches of snow, because we'd be happy if it was just 2 inches in 2014, because I know it was a lot more, because we're all in better shape than 2014, moving all that snow, whether it was mechanical or manual. Wade was doing it manual. I did it mechanical. He's got a young son in 2014. Moving along, and the second piece of paper I give you is the index crime report that's reported to the state. It talks about the serious crimes. Last year we had a couple of robberies at our cell phone store that was attributed to a ring that was going around all the Chicagoland area and doing quite well in the cell phone robberies. We have some burglaries go on, and the thefts are attributed to, the majority of them, people not locking their darn cars. For whatever reason, and I know your board's heard this before, we can fight crime if we just lock our car door sometimes. Moving on, like I said, the state report shows how many drug arrests. There's kind of listed on those matters. We do see, in short summary of, we still see a lot of young people, and I say young people under 21, that like to drink, like to smoke weed while they're driving mom and dad's car, and kind of go on with life. Some of them are frequent flyers, and the court systems are involved in them. A lot of parents come up and have to get their car out of hock and retrieve their kid waiting for the next court appearance. But it's a shame that today's world, some of our young people, thinking I've got to smoke or drink to go down the road, which we know will have some perils that we will not be good for anyone involved, whether the citizens or the young lads themselves. So we haven't stopped that problem world. Tomorrow in briefing, tomorrow we're going to update the police department, and later on the board will hear about it when I return. We're doing some training where our police will be looking at Narcan in the squad cars for the overdose world, and so we're going to a training program to train our officers to carry Narcan, and that's another topic, but just to let you know, because sometimes we can get there and save a life before the fire departments can get there. So that's kind of my short version. I think I did pretty well compared to past presentations I've done before.
Trustees, do you have any questions of the chief concerning his annual report?
Could I have a copy of that for the record?
I'll give you as many copies as you want.
Just one.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
Do we pay anything to the Secretary of State to get that information?
It's a $500 fee. We only do it every couple of years.
Every 2 years, I think.
Yeah, because of the 2-year sticker program.
Yeah.
It's a combination of things. It gets the records cleaned up in addition to letting folks know that we do enforce the sticker.
So, like I said, the Village Sticker is a program that's been going on for a lot of years.
Okay. If there's nothing further, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Engineers report. Troy, any updates?
No, nothing at this time to update.
Okay. Moving on, old business, new business. I don't see Scott Fusi, the Eagle Scout, or his family here today. We had, I had offered Scott an opportunity to come here and be recognized by the board. As per usual, the chief or I usually goes to recognize all the Eagle Scouts at their ceremony, and unfortunately, I had come down with the flu, and the chief presented the certificates and village pins on my behalf, and I like to have the recognition of the Eagle Scouts, so we extended that invitation, and I thought they would be here tonight. So evidently, something came up in their schedule.
Mr. Mayor, you and I have one on the 1st of March for the last.
I know, I got another
one. We'll yell at them when we see them for not showing up.
Oh, that's okay. That's nothing. We can take a picture there, too. Business registration, Service King Paint and Body. I'm going to say something relative to this. Central Body, Central Collision, is changing ownership. And when I saw this in the packet, my first reaction was, oh boy, because that's where I go for all of my auto body stuff, and they have been fantastic over the years handling the insurance, doing repairs that are truly outstanding. So I was a little bit concerned as to what was going on, because the family that owns it, the Caruso family, owns several other operations. And so I talked to Dan, the manager out there that a lot of you are probably familiar with, because if you've ever done anything, he's the guy who comes out to estimate and tell you what's done. And I said, Dan, what's going on? He said, how did you know? And I said, they filed for a business registration. And he said, we just found out the other day. And they held a company-wide meeting, and it turns out the family, the Caruso family that owns Central Body, is essentially retiring from the business. However, they're going to remain the landlords. And the company that is taking over, Service King Paint and Body, it's a nationwide outfit that has over 225 outlets. And their service patterns and record, because Central has won national awards over the last several years from the insurance company and for customer service and a whole bunch of other things. Dan said that the Service King Paint and Body group has a very similar record, and we can look forward to continued quality at the same level of service that we've had through Central. So I wanted to give you that perspective, because my first reaction was, God, I don't want to lose a good business. Not that somebody else coming in wouldn't be as good, but these folks have had a really good track record. So, having said that, George, is there anything else we need to talk about besides the usual, here's the information?
No, sir.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion to approve the business registration of Service King Paint and Body Limited for the ownership of what used to be Central Collision.
Second.
Okay. Motion by trustee Reichert, seconded by trustee Forsythe to approve the business registration of Service King Paint and Body. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Reichert?
Yes.
Mr. Forsythe?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes.
Mr. Reichert? Mr. Hupkey?
Yes.
Mr. Wicker?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries and registration is approved. Farmers Market. Nicole, you're going to formalize what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, right? Our last couple of meetings.
Hi, we are looking to have the farmer's market on the 2nd and 4th Saturday, beginning in June and through September. I don't know what questions that you might have.
It's pretty much the same location.
Yeah, same location.
Approximately the same times.
Yeah.
Street closures will be approximately the same.
Yeah.
I know We were in a meeting this afternoon, morning. You'll be looking for sponsors and, some volunteers to help. We're increasing the number of events that we have.
Kind of doubling it almost, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully getting some additional vendors in, and so those changes that are there are positive changes.
Yeah, we're looking to expand it, pretty much double it from last year, because last year we had a lot of people saying, why is it only once a month, and so the vendors are okay with, coming twice a month, so we're hoping that people will rely on getting their fruits and vegetables and whatever vendors we have.
And last summer, although we only had a handful of vendors, some were local, some were from Michigan, and we had a pretty good selection of fruits and vegetables, I think, throughout the whole summer. And I look forward to it because you supplied us with that and a bunch of other stuff last summer and fall. So good. Trustees, any questions relative to the farmers market schedule for this year or anything?
Thank you for taking this on.
Oh, yes. Amen.
Thank you.
All right. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to grant the special event permit for the farmers market for the dates and times and all the regular stuff that they've had in the past.
Motion. Second.
Okay. Motion by trustee Hupkey, second by trustee Wicker to approve the special event permit for the farmers market for this summer. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Hupkey.
Yes.
Mr. Wicker.
Yes.
Mr. Hack.
Yes.
Mr. Callahan.
Yes.
Mr. Forsythe.
Yes.
Mr. Riker.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Good luck.
Thank you.
Get those volunteers going.
Thanks.
All right, next we've got a sign variance for the Fire Pit Bar and Grill, and Lisa's here, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, talk to us about your sign, Lisa.
Well, I like to put up a sign. I have a hard time finding a place to put a sign here. Unless you put it up on the roof, then I just don't think that's appropriate. So we came up with a pole sign, and where I wanted to put it, I can't do because it's very hard. That building is like got so many different shapes that if you put the sign on one part of the building, you can't see it from the north. If you put it on the other side of the building, you can't see it from the south because it's got like outlets and bump outs and stuff like that. So we're trying to get a pole sign, and it's going to be by the south end of the building. And I got a picture here. You guys have a picture?
They have
Okay.
everything you submitted.
Trustees, the plat survey has an X at the point where the pole would go in the ground.
It's got the white line down, and then you can see the black. You can't really see too well in the picture, so. But it's one way, it's away from the electrical, but yet you can see it from both north and south. It's a nice sign on the top that says just my bar and grill, the Fire Pit Bar and Grill. And then it has the LED underneath, which is a nice LED. It's the one that's got the nice colorful signs, and then it's good for like specials and stuff like that, and what's going on, and
Pretty similar to Tony's.
excuse me?
Pretty similar to Tony's Pizza.
Actually, it's bigger.
Actually,
A little bit
the LED is more like the one by the dentist office.
Okay.
Dr. March's here.
As far as the size goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as the LED sign goes. My sign is, I'm gonna say probably the same size as Tony's, that says Tony's Pizza.
Mm-hmm.
I wanna say it's close to it, the top part of it, but the LED is probably like the one down by the dentist office.
The sign building permit requires a variance for two reasons. One, it's a pole sign in the zoning classification that is not permitted without a variance. And two, the LED is an illuminating sign, and we typically require variances for those. So.
Very nice sign.
It looks like a very nice sign. Trustees, do you have any questions?
Is this permit work requiring inspection to make sure that it's installed correctly?
Yes. Yeah, they'll have to submit a building permit. Sign company's familiar with that, and it's electrical, so they'll have an electrical inspection, and, but this precedes that.
Okay. So make sure it won't fall over into the road.
No, I appreciate that.
Okay. This would be ordinance 14-22, an ordinance regarding a variance for the allowable signage at 306 North Elm Avenue, the Fire Pit Bar and Grill. Do I have a motion to approve ordinance 14-22?
Make a motion, we approve the sign.
Second.
Motion by trustee Hupkey, second by trustee Hack, to approve ordinance 14-22 regarding a variance for the allowable signage at 306 North Harlem Avenue, Fire Pit Bar and Grill. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Hupkey.
Yes.
Mr. Hack.
Yes.
Mr. Callahan.
Yes.
Mr. Forsythe.
Yes.
Mr. Riker.
Yes.
Mr. Whitman.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Good luck. We can see from everything out there, all the vehicles, you're putting a lot of effort into this project. A lot of work, probably a lot more than you ever thought, right?
We've taken away, we are now on our 9th dumpster. 9th big dumpster, not little dumpster. There hasn't probably not been a place, well, we haven't touched the dining room, but everything else has been basically gone. So yes, there's a lot of work and it's looking good. And you're all welcome to stop at any time you want to if you want to see it.
Are you still planning on opening in the spring? Like early spring?
Yeah, we're actually, with the kitchen's completely done. It's been totally done. And behind the bar, we got some little tweaky things we gotta do back there. And we're in the process now of pulling up the floor in front of the bar.
Okay.
And then the dining room, we're not doing a whole lot to. We're hoping to just pull up the carpeting because that's gross. And then maybe paint the floor. Hopefully it's nice wood underneath, I'm praying. And then once I open, like in August, September, Donna's laughing because she's been hearing this so long. August, September, I'm hoping to shut it down again, the dining room part, because I'll have the outside. And that's when I'll go in and remodel, because we have to, I want to get the air conditioning and the heating going properly in there. And it just needs some TLC, and the fire marshal wants me to do something with the ceiling because it's all wood. And I agree with him, you know.
Over the
So-
bar, you gotta, Will County requires a different, like you in the kitchen over the bar too, so make sure you adjust that with the county, with the health department.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we went through hell at the Legion with it, that's why I know that.
So I can't have that wood above the bar? Above the ceiling?
Just, once you get past the bar itself, you're all right.
Oh, that's where my wood is, in front,
Just
right above the bar.
check it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for letting me know
We
that.
gotta tear down that thing, so.
Oh, did you? Okay. That's interesting. Okay. But yeah, it is going good. It's, hope I'm doing everything just right, so it makes it easier when it goes down the road. But it'll be pretty. It'll be pretty when it's
Lisa,
done.
we appreciate you investing in the community and taking a facility that obviously needed a lot of work and bringing it up to very good standards. So I look forward to the opening of the Fire Pit and Bar and Grill, and look forward to enjoying your menu. So
I'm looking forward to it too. I don't like what I'm doing. I want to serve people. That's what I do best.
all right. Thank you, Lisa. Next item on the agenda, identifying work contracts to installment purchase agreements. George, you want to go through that?
As the board will recall, the village, in 2013, the village approved an ordinance completing the sale of $600,000 in debt certificates, i.e. the installment agreement, to be used for street projects. Financial regulations require that those monies may only be used for those purposes stated in the issuance documents. Accordingly, whenever the village wishes to use those monies for projects, the board must adopt a resolution stating the purpose, the contractor, and the dollar amount of the project. Later, if the project costs differ from the bid amount, an amending resolution may be necessary. This resolution amends existing resolutions to reflect the actual amount of debt certificate proceeds used toward the 2015 street projects. The balance of the debt certificate proceeds, $181,930.85, will be used toward payment of pay request number 1 from Iroquois Paving Incorporated. This payment uses the last of the funds from the Series 2013 debt certificate.
Okay, if I have this correct, there are two resolutions connected to this. The,
Just one,
oh, just the one?
yeah.
Okay.
Item E.
So the funding for improvements on Route 50 and Corning Avenue is a separate?
That's a separate topic.
Okay, so we will do, at first, we're going to do Resolution 14-R10, identifying work contracts to installment purchase agreements. Do I have a motion to adopt Resolution 14-R10?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee Wicker, seconded by trustee Hupkey. Because I heard it over that, or trustee Riker, okay. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Wick?
Yes.
Mr. Riker?
Yes.
Mr. Hupkey?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Forsythe?
Yes.
Okay, so Resolution 14-R10 is adopted, identifying the work contracts to the installment purchase agreements, which allow us to pay some bills a little bit later. Next item has to do with the agreement resolution between the village and state of Illinois regarding funding improvements at Illinois Route 50, the traffic signal.
The next two resolutions are similar in character, just different price amounts and different projects. They accomplish pretty much the same thing. The Rath J. Road IDOT resolution, this resolution pertains to Phase 2 engineering of the Rath J. Road STP project, which is Corning Avenue to Joliet Road. The resolution is an agreement between the state of Illinois and the village of Peotone regarding financial commitments from each. The agreement states that the village will budget $160,000 from the general fund and $40,000 from MFT for this work. The state will reimburse the village for the $160,000 budgeted in the general fund, even though, just parenthetically, even though we still get reimbursed, we'll still need to appropriate the money for initial payment. Note, even though the village will be reimbursed for the costs as stated, we need to formally appropriate the costs in our budget. While the Route 50 signal, as well as next year, also next year, the village may need to perform a short-term loan to accommodate cash flow during reimbursement periods. This is the resolution for Phase 2 engineering regarding reimbursement for federal funding through IDOT.
Okay, so we've got two resolutions we're going to act on. The first one is the Rath J. Road IDOT resolution. And
We need to do them separately.
yeah, that's what I thought. And that would be Resolution 14-R11. Is there a motion to adopt that one, the Rath J. Road IDOT resolution?
Motion.
Okay, motion by trustee Forsythe, seconded by trustee
Second.
Reichert to approve the Rath J. Road IDOT resolution. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Forsythe?
Yes.
Mr. Riker?
Yes.
Okay, I've twisted these on my agenda.
Yes, that's why I
Yeah.
had to stop.
Well, because I was looking at the sheet, the page. Okay,
This one should have been the Route 50 improvement.
okay, but,
Yes?
it doesn't matter.
I don't care.
We'll just switch the order.
So the order on the sheets is backwards from
Yeah.
the order on the agenda.
Right.
That's the first one I read.
So the Rath J. Road one is 11, and
Okay.
that one we just went through it approved, correct?
We're not finished yet.
Oh,
Okay.
all right.
Mr. Hupkey?
Yes.
Mr. Wicker?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes.
And Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Now we're approved.
Yeah.
Okay, motion carries. All right, and now, the resolution for the Route 50 IDOT signal, Route 50 signal IDOT resolution would be Resolution 14-R12. Okay, is there a motion to adopt that one?
Guess who's gonna say there's a motion for that? I'd make a motion.
Second.
Motion by trustee Wicker, second by trustee Forsythe, to approve resolution 14-R12 for the Route 50 IDOT signal. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Wicker?
Yes.
Mr. Forsythe?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes.
Mr. Hupkey?
Yes.
Mr. Riker?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries, that resolution is adopted. Then we get to the 2014 paving request payment for Iroquois. Can you do that, Rick?
Yeah. Iroquois Paving has submitted pay request number 1 in the amount of $223,535.42, plus $11,176.77 in retention, for a payment of $212,358.65. The work is complete, except for some restoration. Robertson Engineering and Mr. Hankey are satisfied with the work and recommend payment. This is for the paving projects that were done by the village last year, as well as the Corning Avenue Bridge rehab.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion to pay Iroquois Paving in the amount of $212,358.65 as payment number 1 for the paving, 2014 paving program.
So moved.
Motion by trustee Reichert, seconded by trustee Hupkey. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Riker?
Yes.
Mr. Hupkey?
Yes.
Mr. Wicker?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Forsythe?
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries, and that check is now issued as part of the checks that you approved earlier. The contract with Dynergy Energy Services.
I put the AR in there through 2 revisions of the board packet and finally caught it. The village is part of an electric cooperative to purchase power at discount rates. Now, this is for the village accounts. This isn't for the residential accounts. This is purely for some specific village accounts, 7 of them that are primarily well houses and lift stations. The cooperative is called NIMEC, Northern Illinois Municipal Electric Cooperative. NIMEC is different from the village-wide cooperative for residents. NIMEC purchases power for accounts at lift stations and wells. They solicited bids from 3 energy companies, Dynegy, Constellation, and MC Squared. The low bidder is Dynegy Energy Services, LLC. Our current rate for these accounts is $4.15 per kilowatt hour. The 24-month renewal rate is $5.10 per kilowatt hour. The renewal rate is a significant increase over the current rate. However, the current rate was locked in 3 years ago, and it was locked in when electric rates were at a historical low. You've got a copy of that in a copy of the chart in your board packet, and we were right down here. So we were fortunate going through the bidding process to have 3 years of low, relatively low electric rates for those accounts. The new rate remains substantially less than rates experienced in the middle of the last decade. The village has signed a 24-month contract with Dynegy Energy Solutions for these 7 accounts. A motion is required to affirm the contract with Dynegy Energy Solutions.
Without the R.
Yeah.
All right, so I will entertain a motion to affirm the contract with Dynegy Energy Solutions for the next 24 months.
So moved.
Second. Motion by trustee Wicker, second by trustee Reichert to approve the, to affirm the contract with Dynegy Energy Solutions for the village electrical supply for the 24-month contract period. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Wicker?
Yes.
Mr. Riker?
Yes.
Mr. Hupkey?
Yes.
Mr. Forsythe?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries, and that contract is affirmed. Next item. I'll take care of this one. It's membership of the South Suburban Mayors and Managers. In recent years, the villages of Crete, Monee, and Beecher have joined the South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association. Matter of fact, Beecher just joined last year. This association is a council of governments similar to the Will County Governmental League. The South Suburban Mayors and Managers service area has historically been South Cook County. However, in the recent years, their activity has expanded to Will County, particularly eastern Will County. And this group is a source of additional grants. The village of Beecher recently got a grant to work on the Route 1 corridor. The South Suburban Mayors and Managers occasionally has taken policy decisions that were at odds with the village of Peotone. These decisions have come to our attention mainly after the fact after they have forwarded their recommendations to the state legislature on some key issues. It would be beneficial to the village to be engaged in these policy deliberations, at the very least, to be aware of policy recommendations affecting eastern Will County. Their annual dues, the dues for the coming year that starts June 1 is $2,500 a year, which is a discount compared to some of the rates that we would pay. We're still going to get our transportation funding through Will County Governmental League as opposed to the South Suburban Mayors and Managers. I think it's more beneficial to us to keep the funding through Will County in terms of the amounts and the accessibility to it. That's part of where we're getting the money for the Rathje Road project, and so additional money, I think, for the
Corning Avenue reconstruction.
The Corning Avenue reconstruction, which will take place after we do the Rathje Road stuff. That's stuff that I don't think we just stood much of a chance for if we had our funding going through South Suburban Mayors and Managers. They're doing a lot of stuff, and if we're not part of it, we stand the risk of being excluded. And I think it's beneficial for us as a community to participate in that. So I'd like to entertain a motion to join the South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association for $2,500 for the coming year.
Okay, quick question.
Yeah.
You say occasionally you've taken policy decisions at odds with the Village of Peotone. You have a couple of examples of that?
Gosh. They've done stuff relative to some things.
They're proactive. Well, the majority of the membership is proactive in supporting the airport. That's one example. But by the same token, they're recommending policy to the state legislatures, and it would be good if we were engaged in those conversations.
Do we know how many communities are members of this organization, roughly?
It's large. I don't know off the top of my head. But essentially, it's the South Suburban Cook area, and they go west also, but I'm not quite sure whether or not Frankfurt or some of the other communities also participates.
Tinley is, but I don't know.
Tinley is, yeah.
Okay.
So.
Not Frankfurt.
Is there any reason why you weren't in this before?
Primarily the cost factor. Originally, we were of the impression that it was going to cost us like $4,500, and that would have been the cost if we basically had all of our transportation funding mechanism transferred from Will County to them. But I think dual participation here is something because the nature of eastern Will County tends to relate to via I-57, via Governor's Highway, via Route 1 and everything, to stuff that is directly north of us, to be part of those discussions, as Beecher discovered, as they got money for their Route 1 corridor grant that was going to work up to the community of Beecher. They were going to work on stuff there. Now Beecher was included in that. So I think we stand a good chance to get some stuff back on this, besides being in the loop.
And historically,
Okay.
now historically, they didn't come that far south of the Cook County line.
No.
It's only in the last few years. For instance, Crete has a little bit of territory in both Cook and, if I recall correctly, Cook and Will County. And it's only in the last few years that some of the municipalities have started joining that.
Moni only joined a few years back.
Yeah, and Beecher joined last year.
Yeah.
And some of that is, they being South Suburban Mayors and Managers, seem to be more engaged in what happens in East Will County than they were 5 to 10 years ago.
And to underscore a point, they were the ones who got the funding going relative to the interchange on 57 for, what's the road?
Stunkel.
Skunkel Road,
Thank
the
you.
overpass on Skunkel.
Stunkel, plus they also got some funding to improve that road further east. So,
Well, that would go hand in hand with their pro airport stands.
well, that would also go into the fact of their offering more direct access to Governor's State University from the highway, plus the economic development aspect of making those industrial parks more accessible to the interstate.
With respect to the proposals that they make or contact they make with legislatures, is that based on group voting, for example? Is it simply a matter of the majority of the organization?
I suspect it is, but they also, my understanding is they also will if there's a large enough minority, so to speak, if enough people disagree, they'll also bring those points forward as well.
Okay.
But it is, I don't want to misrepresent it, it is, their policy is whatever the majority of their board feels. And we're entitled to separate ourselves from that opinion.
Do you
The other thing is they tend to catch the ear of the legislators.
Right.
And even though you may not agree with their position, if you're in the room, you can still voice your opinion.
And they have been able to engage people in the Department of Transportation and Governor's administration that oftentimes the networks that we're part of in Will County and the like don't have similar access. So,
do you have a feel for whether or not we'll have a voice that's heard? It may not be accepted, but will we have an opportunity to realistically state our
Because I think
positions?
we already share some common philosophies with places like Beecher and Monee.
It's wages, almost, if you don't get in to participate, you don't have a voice at all.
Right.
So they have an effect on us now. If anybody likes it or not, for us not to be there, at least voice our opposition to something we may not like, is foolish.
and I think getting back to what George just alluded to, the fact that it would be the 4 communities of eastern Will County
Right.
working pretty much in unison, because what affects one of us usually affects all of us. It gives us as a region a little bit more.
It's only a 1-year commitment, right, at this point?
1 year at a time. Okay. Will somebody put forth a motion to join for?
Motion.
Second.
Okay. Motion by trustee Hupkey, seconded by trustee Wicker to join the South Suburban Mayors and Managers for the coming year, which starts June 1st at a rate not to exceed $2,500. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Hupkey.
Yes.
Mr. Wicker.
Yes.
Mr. Hack.
Yes.
Mr. Callahan.
Yes.
Mr. Forsythe.
Yes.
Mr. Wicker.
Yes. Okay. Motion carries, and we will proceed forward with that. Now we're coming to a discussion that we have alluded to from time to time, and we need to move forward and kind of formalize it. This is discussion topic only. It's a moratorium on development fees, and I'll just do a quick overview of this. We currently have 115 lots that have been approved in existing subdivisions. They're in Westgate, they're at Myers Glen, there's a few scattered around town in other subdivisions. But these are lots that we've already approved everything, and we've noticed that a number of communities within the area are temporarily waiving development fees for the purpose of encouraging, kind of priming the pump in order to get construction started within their communities again, in those already approved, underscored, already approved subdivisions. And we have some possibilities as to how we could do this. I have invited John Walsh, who is the developer of Westgate, to reflect as a developer on the impact of doing something like this, and we can talk about some of the ins and outs of what we would do. So,
If I can give a little bit of background, so that John doesn't know what the board has, just so he's got a little bit of background. It is for single-family dwellings on existing vacant lots in platted subdivisions. The items under discussion are waiving the development fees for the village, which would be administration, police, water, and sewer. Those are development fees. The proposal right now is not to waive water, sewer, and meter fees because those are incurred costs, nor building permit fees and inspections. Those are incurred costs. We'd also be looking at waiving the library, school site, and park site fees as a topic of conversation. And some of the topics before the board are A, do we do it or not? B, if so, which fees are waived? And C, the duration. When does it stop? And I know, John, that's a conversation you and I have had. So any insight you can give as a builder and developer, the board would like to hear.
Okay, I would. First, I'd like to say how appreciative the home building industry is that you're thinking about doing something like that. It's been a tough pull for the last 6, 7, 8 years, so anything that the village could do is a plus. It helps generate some business. George and I did meet and talk briefly on some of the proposals that you may or may not do, but I can say one thing. I mean, the rural areas, Peotone being one of them, have not quite come back as fast as maybe the Frankfurts and New Lenoxes and maybe it's a little disheartening to drive by and see developments in those towns and say, why not ours? Your town's nicer than those towns, in my opinion. But that being said, you might need to prod it a little bit. And I can't say for certain what Frankfurt, but I know New Lenox a couple of years ago had done something very similar to what you're proposing now. Manhattan, where I live, had done something very similar to that. So I don't think you can go to page 14 of the manual and decide what it is you want to do. So it's kind of an open book. But certainly anything that would encourage building, which right now is all price driven. So if there's an advantage for a builder to save X amount of dollars on a home that he can pass along to the prospective home buyer, be it in the form of upgraded cabinets, wood floor, ceramic tile, those kinds of things, that's a big plus. So what George had talked about is obviously very interesting to the builder. It shows a commitment from the village that you are builder friendly. That it tells them that we can go down there knowing that we're not going to have opposition on every little thing. Not to bring up sore subjects, but in 2000, 2004, 2005, some of the, we were getting hit with fees increases yearly, and things were kind of going a little wild there. And you can see what perhaps no building does. It's not a good thing anywhere. So again, I commend you for entertaining the thought of whatever it is you do to help boost us along a little bit. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you would have, but if I could.
I have a question for you, John. If you had made a decision to build this particular waiver is not going to really influence whether you build or don't build, isn't it? I mean, it's nice, it's helpful, but ultimately $10,000 or less isn't gonna make the decision on whether to go forward with any projects.
Well, mind you, I have the project already. I mean, I'm not going forward with the
Right.
project. My project's sitting out there.
As a developer.
If I could make one suggestion, I'd take another step. This $10,000 in savings, give incentive for a buyer to move to Peotone, to buy my house. I mean, I can honestly tell you, it's not money in my pocket. That money's getting passed along to the home buyer, because that's what it's going to take, because let's face it, what we're doing now is not working.
Right. And that right there tells me that perhaps we need some sort of buyer credit as opposed to developer waiver. Because I don't think the numbers reflect that waiver of the permits will, or the fees will bring the numbers in terms of building. I mean, Wilmington waives the fees, it's had 2 permits. Manhattan doesn't, it's had 48.
Well, but Manhattan is, and I almost made a comment, Manhattan's an outlier, because they had a couple of very large, or at least one very large, hundreds of lot subdivision, where the developer went bankrupt, the bank bought it, the developer bought it back from the bank for 25, 50 cents on the dollar. So that's a large part of what you're seeing there, is that deep discount already built in.
My point
And
is,
I might add, Manhattan has hundreds of vacant lots, plural, hundreds, like, they might have 400 platted. I mean, they've got a huge amount of inventory there. And they've had, and if I may, they had a couple, one deal in particular was an SSA, which turned out to be a total nightmare, still is. And that's why it's sitting there. They've got many problems more than waiving of the fee. But you are correct, Manhattan did a buyer incentive, I think, when you bought, they might have cut the check back, actually.
and that's what I mean. Buyers are going to spur development, regardless of the waiver of development fees. So if we can somehow ensure through our developers that the money, the savings is passed on to the buyers, it'll be a win all for everybody. It'll be a win for the buyer, the developer, because he's still getting the business, and the village will have homes built, new tax base, new residents. And so I think in terms of the waiver, we might want to consider structuring it in a way that we can advertise to buyers, come here, we'll save you money. We'll do this for cheaper than the guy in the next town.
A deferral until certificate of occupancy?
A deferral or some sort of just agreement with the developer, will there be some sort of credit back or some sort of
You'd
arrangement?
be talking to each individual builder, is what you'd be talking.
It's possible, right, but we can have a general policy that we try to entertain with each developer that comes to town.
Others?
Is there any towns that use that system that Trustee Callahan is,
There are towns that use deferrals.
and how do those work?
Basically, the fees are not due until time to issue a certificate of occupancy. The theory there is the builder isn't carrying those fees while the house is sitting there.
In effect, it helps the builder because they don't have to front the fees.
If I could, though, and referring to Manhattan in particular, I'm almost positive they did cut a check to Mr. and Mrs. Smith when they bought that house, when they closed on the house. Part of the occupancy permit was actual money. Because I know some of the mortgage brokers that they were special need, if you will, that they were able to use that money towards their down payment. So what you say is very true, that went directly to the buyer. But I do think it directly, I mean, cash went to the buyer. It wasn't a deferral or a delay or anything. It was actual cash.
And I think it's hard to turn that down, and perhaps through a deferral and then a check or some, we'd have to consider how to structure it, but if the developer can defer the fees and then perhaps once the transaction is underway in terms of earnest money and other forms of payment, perhaps then we begin to collect some of those fees so that at the closing, we can then refund a check to buyers, at which point, from a buyer perspective, it's hard not to consider the fact that you may be getting money in your pocket when you walk out of the closing. or at least to help you offset your title costs.
I'm sure they
closing fees.
signed the back of it and gave it to the builder for
Right.
upgraded cabinets or wood floor or anything like that. But your point's well taken. I mean, it's, if that's what you're looking for, is some extra incentive for the buyer to locate here.
Right. I mean, you would agree, I don't think you could disagree, that it's the buyers that are going to spur development, not a $10,000 waiver.
Well, let's face it, I mean, whoever's got the money that's the main character in the
Right.
story. So,
Buyers
I
through
mean,
their
if the
lenders.
buyer's coming with the money, the buyer's, he's the straw that stirs the drink. So if you're helping him out, I mean, that's a good thing.
Okay. Let's approach the questions again. Is the board interested in pursuing some type of incentive type of program, similar to anything that's been discussed here? Or is
I'm
this?
interested in what trustee Callahan has suggested.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to know more about that too.
Okay.
We gotta do something.
Yeah.
No doubt.
So, in effect, what we're looking at, just so I can be clear, is developer would come in still to pay these fees. However, we would waive collecting them until closing occupancy type thing. Once that happened, developer would write the necessary checks, check would come to us, we would basically give a check to the buyer, who, as John pointed out, would probably turn it back over to the builder in order to pay for those little extras. At least that's part of the stuff that you can use as a sales.
Well, I can tell you in Manhattan, they used that check, because I talked to one of the mortgage brokers, and he was able to go to underwriting, and that was like bringing in additional down payment.
Yeah.
But you had to close to get it.
It was an assistant to the payment.
That's right. So, I mean, on a 250 house, if 5%'s required, that's what, 12.5?
Okay.
So they had 75 of their own, and then it was 5, or it might have even been more in Manhattan. I'm not exactly sure, but they actually,
So
had a check.
they would get credit for a larger down payment.
Well, maybe it wasn't even larger. Maybe it was just the minimum necessary, but that pushed them over the line. So your program was, made sense to
It
that,
spurs
because
less
that was a
out.
deal, a sale you might not have had.
Okay.
Because they didn't have the down payment.
Okay.
It's
That-
less out of pocket.
And that's huge, going from a 0%, zero money down
Oh,
world to a
Well, from
20%.
3 to 5, I mean, $5,000
$5,000
cash is a lot of money, or 7,000, or whatever their number was. Now, that doesn't mean the first person comes in the door doesn't go with group 3 cabinets and puts all $7,500 in the cabinets, so,
Okay.
But how,
I think we get clarification of what we're all understanding.
how they did it, George, I don't know, to be
Yeah,
quite
because-
frank with you.
we get phone calls at 8:30 in the morning saying we're closing at noon. What do we need to do?
Well, obviously, that's not gonna fly, and you
Well,
can
I'm just,
check with-
yeah, and then everybody gets angry because you're postponing your closing and yada, yada, yada. And then it becomes a function of, well, when do I get my check? Well, it has to be approved through a board meeting. What do you mean, I gotta wait 2 weeks to get my check? I mean, those are some of the things that I'm initially trying to think
Well,
through.
Kevin Singh up
And I'm
in
not saying
Manhattan
it can't
could probably,
be answered, but, yeah.
clear that up with a phone call, because he was involved in that from the beginning.
If we adopt that as policy, would you need a formal approval on each check?
I think we should.
I mean, you approve every single check that we cut.
Yeah.
And the only time there's a difference in that policy is when we postpone typically the Christmas meeting of the board, and then we affirm them after the fact. And that's for routine and customary. I'm not gonna say that it can't be done, I'm simply saying it's
You meant formal for the board.
something that has to be looked
I retract what
into.
I said. I don't necessarily feel that we need a formal board approval. I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. I think there may be a way of working around the formal board approval, is what I'm saying.
And if we got a policy stating that we're cutting these checks based on a certain program, you know, and that policy is in place for X amount of years, months, whatever, you know, do you need to approve each specific check?
Well, you're dealing with a certain number of lots here.
A maximum of
There's
150.
your gauge.
And the other part of it
You're not
is,
gonna go over that unless you decide to do that later on.
the
Right now, you're
other
dealing with
part of this
150
discussion
lots.
is this an offer until all 115 lots are gone? Is this something that is in effect for 2 years, 24 months or something like that, in order to prime the pump, and then some of that can go back to the entities that need it?
I mean, most communities put an outside limit either in terms of calendar limit, number of new building permits issued, or both, whichever comes, you know.
Yeah.
The
That's
earliest.
something you gotta consider.
I'm thinking new permits, and then if we choose to extend it, we can, but it may even provide an initial first come, first serve kind of mentality. If we put a 2-year limit on it, then maybe we'll all wait 2 years to see how the economy is right before the deadline. If we say the first 30 permits, am I going to be one of the first 30 or not? I better get moving.
Okay. Part of what we're looking at too is the fact of, in order for this to take effect for the current building season, we should come up with some policy within the next 30 days max, so that the word gets out to the builders and the others that this is what it's going to be here, so they know how to play the game.
My whole push is that I think we need to, through whatever means, it's really an issue of providing incentive to the buyer, not necessarily incentive to the developer.
I see your point.
That's really what I'm trying to push for. Now, how we'll do that? Well, I suppose some research would be a good start.
I think that'd be the first call.
Yes.
Yeah, it will be a call. All right, but, okay, so I sense a willingness by the board to pursue this with the idea behind it of it's ultimately the buyer who's going to feel the initial benefit of this, and what do we have to do to work out the details to make a system that is both legal and accountable and manageable without making all sorts of extra work for a whole bunch of people.
And, you know, just brainstorming here, I mean, perhaps the developer can be required to put a certain sum into escrow, and so we can stay out of it in terms of issuing checks. It could be by contract. I mean, I'm just thinking of brainstorming ideas that maybe need to be thought out more thoroughly.
Yeah, and I think part of this too is for us to, one of the reasons that we invited John is John has been very, very cooperative in terms of working with the village in order to make certain that his development is one that we can be proud of, and we have good quality homes out there. And I think it's a matter of, we're probably going to be talking to you, John, from time to time.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
That'd be a good thing.
Here's where we think this is going. Give us feedback of positives and negatives on it.
Well, as I say, I think just having the discussion is a plus, because anything you can do is, you know, a good thing right now, because I just feel that, you know, Peotone is, like a lot of more rural communities, is not really come back the way some others have. Be it, you know, you can name them. You know the same ones as I do.
But you add what you're saying. Once we get prices of new homes into the factor of average cost of sales and everything, statistics that you read in the Tribune for the last month or year or whatever it is, what we're actually doing is we're increasing the value of everybody's property who's in the community.
And if I may add one thing on your point about the length of the term, you know, in the home building industry, things don't happen overnight. So you might have a customer who wants to move to Peotone, has to put their house up for sale, close that house before they get approved for a mortgage. So if you would bear in mind, that, what you might think a year is a long time, but in the building industry, a year is really not that long. I mean, you get somebody, say your program gets out and it gets advertised and it's already the 1st of June, and they put their house up for sale and it takes 5 months to sell it. Now it's Thanksgiving. We're going to move in with Mom, and you start the house, John, the 1st of March, or this year, the 1st of May, whenever the snow leaves. So, you're back into, believe it or not, it's September, October. They're pushing us to get in before the kids start school. So, it isn't something, the turnaround is not as quick as maybe you would think it is. So when you're talking about how long do we do this for, bear in mind that what you plant in June isn't necessarily a 2015 crop, so to speak, or 2015 harvest. You might be, and the last thing you want is somebody to get. We lost out on it at the last minute, and we've sold our house, and now we don't qualify, and now everybody's mad. So,
I think one of the advantages of a timeline, though, is we can reevaluate what's going on. If it's not working, if it is working, do we need to be more aggressive the next year?
That's no doubt about it. And if you know what the economy is going to be like in 2 years from now, I want to have a talk with So your point is well taken. So, but as I was explaining to George, it's quite frankly, if you're going to do it for 6 months, don't bother. So,
but from your professional experience, do you believe that a defined time limit would be more productive, or do you believe that a certain set number of permits would be more productive in terms of spurring otherwise questionable developers into committing when they otherwise might wait it out?
Well, quite frankly, it might be easier to just, we're going to run the program until we don't run the program. And then you're not bound by a set of rules, be it a date, be it a certain amount. It's going good, let's keep it going for a while. We don't need to do it anymore. You don't have to explain to somebody that, well, you said it was going to be 24 months. Well, was that from, X date or Y date? You might want to leave it as open-ended as you can, and just among yourselves decide, hey, the program has worked well, and we don't need it anymore, or it's working well, and let's continue it. So,
But John, if the board does not set an end date, we run the risk of confusing potential buyers in the sense of you're talking to them, you're showing them homes, and the board on June 1 says, I'm not, this is just numbers, dates. The board on June 1 says, okay, we're going to wrap this program up in 3 months. Well, 4 months later, these guys your buyers get back to you and say, we want to build. And then it's, oh, well, I didn't know they were going to do it, but they shut the program down.
Certainly you're going to end it someday. I mean, there's no question about it. All I'm saying is, I don't know if I'd take the aspirin until I had the headache about when to end it. You haven't really started it. If we're in contact and you tell me, hey, any contract you bring in after October 1st of whatever year is not going to be eligible for this. Well, then I'm on the phone to my potential customers saying, listen, that village program we talked about, if we don't have a signed contract by October 1st, you're not eligible. So I can sign a contract in September, take 4 months to build a house, even though your program has, in essence, stopped for new people, they're still covered because of the contract, is one way of doing it.
Well, yeah, we would probably tie any kind of termination date to the issuance to the date of an approved building permit.
Mm-hmm. Or building permit, there you go, building permit, and that way I need to get the building permit approved by a certain date, because anything after that is not. But all I'm saying, George, is I don't know if you need to spend a whole lot of time and head scratching when you implement the program, worrying about how to, a date to end it, as long as you are businesslike and give the builders enough time. I would hope you wouldn't call me on Friday and say, hey, Monday it's over.
you
Well,
know,
but there
so-
was also, that also runs into the issue of how do we contact the builders? I mean,
Yeah.
we may have a list today, and 6 months from now, 5 of the lots have changed ownership.
Well,
We don't know it.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
there's that question too. I'm totally on board with
Yeah.
talking and contacting the builders, but half the time, we don't know when the lots change.
Right. Well, then maybe it's, you know, it's up to the builder to, you know, his responsibility that if he's talking to a potential customer, that he has been in contact with you to know that the program's still in effect.
I think part of it too is, one of the things that I alluded to before is, of the 115 permits, do we say the first 50? And then we'll reevaluate the program, something like that, which gives you, it removes the time deadline specifics, and it gets it to, how many you got left on the phone call?
I also think it gives the other 3 entities that we're dealing with, the other 3 taxing bodies that we're dealing with, some kind of gauge on what's going on, not just leaving it open-ended. You know, the library, the school, the park, you know, that, I don't want these entities to think that, you know, starting now till whenever we decide, you're not gonna get impact fees anymore. So that they have some kind of idea what we're looking at, and at that point, if they wanna approach us at a meeting or say, hey, this is not working for us, or this is working, you know.
Yeah, and part of it too is, school enrollment has dropped lately, so capacity to fill before the need comes in for additional facilities and the like. You've got a little bit of a cushion of time. And I think the more we talk about it, the more the approach of, let's set the first 50, 75, whatever it is we determine, and get the word out there that we will reevaluate at that point in time. And
But
if it turns
also-
out that we don't get 50 or...
Your argument, Chris, with the library board and the rest, the impact fee is a one-time shot here.
Yeah.
Once we get that person in the house, he's on the tax rolls now, and they start collecting, so that's a plus here.
That's a plus. The other plus is we start to get the rooftops and the numbers of customers to support businesses more successfully in this area. So, all right. This has been a very good discussion. It's been a very good discussion because I think all of us have kind of broadened our understanding of the impact development fees, and how it can spur the market, and also some of the drawbacks of, let's think about how we do this. So at this point, we're going to be checking with some of the other communities around to get a sense of a little bit more of the specifics about how we do it, and see if we can come up with some thoughts relative to, if we are to do this, arbitrarily say 50 permits, how's this all going to work out? What are the dynamics? What has to happen when this happens and that happens, and how does the check go from one entity to another with the least amount of impact and the least amount of bureaucracy, but still with a monitoring kind of system that can be audited and made sure that there are no drawbacks to it in terms of we're not really serving the intent that we wanted to serve. So, all right. Thanks for coming, John.
Thank you.
We'll be
And like I
talking.
said, my hat's off to you, village board and mayor, to entertain the thought. It means a lot to builders that they know that.
And I know that there are some communities in Kankakee County in particular that have taken on this type of thing too. So it puts us in a more competitive ballpark, that we're willing to look at these things and help, as you pointed out, the potential buyer in the long run, which I think this is going to do. So, okay. Any more on the subject? Hearing that, I'm going to move back to the agenda, and we're pretty much done. Do we have any announcements or Do you have any due dates coming up here?
Last day of February is last day of dog tags, then we have penalties.
Okay. So spend your $5 and register.
Spend your $5 now, save $5 in the future.
I know it didn't come up in the engineer report, but
Yeah.
the generator looked like it was in
The
and,
one on Wilmington Road?
yeah, functioning.
No, we're
No?
waiting on, it would appear
Gas
from the
company.
outside to be functioning, yes, but
Okay.
we're waiting on these gas service line,
Okay.
NICOR service line to be installed. So, that's probably going to be a few weeks. Yes, it is up and most of the components are there except for the gas. So,
Anything else? I will entertain a motion to adjourn the February 23rd board meeting.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by trustee Forsythe, seconded by trustee Hupkey to adjourn the February 23rd, 2015 Village of Peotone board meeting. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Forsythe?
Yes.
Mr. Hupkey?
Yes.
Mr. Riker?
Yes.
Mr. Ricker?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Okay. Motion carries.